Hello, and welcome to Learning Curve, Navigating Education Access in a Pandemic. I'm Kristen Roberts, Vice President of News for McClatchy, and I'm joining you from my home here in Miami. This school year is beginning with more questions than answers. Working families are struggling to help their kids learn online. Parents are sending their children into the classroom and classes from home. And break the digital divide that can leave some students behind. How should our schools, our educators, and parents tackle these issues? Today, we've gathered leaders, educators, mental health experts, and parents to help find answers to these questions. We hope these conversations bring you insight and value. In addition to this discussion today, we will hold a national conversation on September the 3rd that is focused on the challenges of educating during a pandemic. I hope you'll join us then as well. So let's begin. I'd like to introduce Miami Herald Senior Editor, Dave Wilson, who will lead today's conversation.
Thanks, Kristen. And welcome, everyone. Sorry about those technical difficulties, but that's our life online these days, isn't it? Welcome to our discussion about navigating education access in a pandemic. Today, we'll be talking to the superintendents responsible for the education and well-being of more than 500,000 South Florida public school students. We'll also be hearing from teachers and mental health experts. So let's get right to it and start the discussion with the superintendents. Alberto Carvalho is starting his 13th year as superintendent of Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Miami-Dade is the nation's 4th largest school district with more than 345,000 students and 40,000 teachers and staff. It has been recognized as one of the nation's top urban school districts. And Mr. Carvalho, who began his career with Miami-Dade Schools as a teacher, has been honored as both the state and national superintendent of the year. Robert Runcie is in his 10th year as superintendent of Broward County Public Schools. Broward is the nation's 6th largest school district with 270,000 students and 33,000 teachers and staff. Mr. Runcie, who comes from a business and administration background, has been recognized as the state superintendent of the year as well. Beyond heading up 2 of the largest school districts in the country, our superintendents have something else in common. They're both immigrants, Mr. Carvalho from Portugal and Mr. Runcie from Jamaica. So they can relate to the thousands of immigrant and first-generation students and parents in their districts with that shared personal experience. Thank you, gentlemen, for making the time to join us today.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Mr. Runcie, Broward County began its academic year last week with all teachers and students in a virtual environment. How have your first days gone compared to last spring, and what adjustments have you been making?
Yeah, I think we started out very successfully given the circumstances we're under. We know from last spring that there were challenges having to close schools and open abruptly within a week and to pivot to a totally new education model. We spent the entire summer with a laser-like focus on ensuring that our teachers were trained in the tools and techniques and strategies around e-learning. So that the experience this year could be very different. And so far, that investment, time, training, professional development for our teachers has paid off. So parents and students are seeing a very different type of experience this school year.
Thanks. We heard that there were some rough spots that first morning when everybody was trying to jump online.
Yeah.
How'd you smooth that out?
Yeah, so actually it lasted from probably about 8:30 to 9 o'clock within that window when our high schoolers came on board. And it was something related to our provisioning system for signing on that was resolved. And we've been moving forward since then. You haven't heard anything since that point. So we're pleased with it. But hey, look, this is technology and we're doing it at scale. That's unprecedented for many others. We've had over 212,000 students and teachers simultaneously on the system every day. I think yesterday you heard nationally that Zoom had problems. We don't use Zoom in Broward. We use Microsoft Teams. That's proved to be fairly stable for us. But it's a work in progress. We've made investments. We've had a blended online learning platform for the past 3 years where the majority of teachers are comfortable. What we've done over the past few months is do the rest of that lift and make sure that everyone else is up to speed and continue to improve our infrastructure.
Thanks so much. Mr. Carvalho, Miami-Dade begins its classes in an online environment too next Monday. How will this be different from last spring in your district, and what changes have you been making for teachers, students, and their parents?
It will be a very different experience. We've gone from an instructional continuity plan, which we utilized last year, which required teachers, students, and parents really to deal with a multitude of platforms and applications. We knew that was challenging. It was sort of a seamless transition last year, but we identified that as the biggest problem. So since the state approved our innovative plan, which was about a month ago, we procured and acquired a single platform, single system, single sign-in system, K-12, have loaded over 1,200 courses onto it. We are right now in the middle of professional development, intensive professional development with teachers, 5 days worth. We began an orientation for parents and students this week, and it will continue through the end of this week. We faced some of the same challenges that Bob described. I mean, this is technology 2020. So yesterday, we had problems both with Zoom, but most importantly with GoDaddy, which is the host entity for our week of welcoming, which provided the orientation for students and parents. We were able to overcome, and by the end of the day, we had over 178,000 users of that platform. So expect August 31st, Monday, for a anticipated smooth reopening of schooling, 100% online. One big difference will be that there will be synchronous and asynchronous continuous live teaching with dramatically expanded direct teaching time under one single platform. So we made quite a bit of investment this year. We spent quite a bit of time in the summer refreshing our technology. We put 120,000 devices in the hands of students. We left the devices with the students during the summer. But we acquired 25,000 additional laptop computers for replacement. And in addition to the 11,000 hotspots for connectivity, we are ready to put out an additional 5,000 in the next few days and weeks. So we want to start in a much better place than we left off last year. We reached close to 100% connectivity and 92% attendance. Now the goal this year is not only to hit attendance, but it's really to hit high levels of student engagement.
So you talked about the challenge of those multiple platforms that were brought into play in the short pivot last spring. Beyond that platform change, for each of you, what's been the biggest challenge to preparing for this start compared to where we were in the spring? Mr. Carvalho, if you could go first.
Actually, one of my biggest concerns is not necessarily our level of readiness here. I trust our leaders and teachers. I trust the resilience of our teachers and students and the level of collaboration, cooperation, support of the parents. We've developed systems to address that. But I do have two specific concerns. One is really the level of engagement, not attendance, daily attendance, but engagement, particularly specific to some of the most fragile populations of students, English language learners, students in poverty, and students with disabilities, where we noticed in the last quarter of last year, these students were less engaged than their counterparts. Obviously, that leads to a growing concern specific to the learning loss, compounded not only by a disrupted fourth quarter, but then the summer regression that a lot of students experience. So we decided this summer to offer 2 virtual sessions to catch up some of those students and engage in acceleration strategies in every single school for those students. My other big concern, quite frankly, which is probably one that my friend Bob Runcie shares, is, look, this was a health crisis that led to an economic crisis wrapped, by a social justice crisis in this country. And I'm very concerned about the level of federal monetary support that has been appropriated thus far. I am a recession superintendent. Back in 2008, 2009, to protect K-12 education, the federal government had already appropriated close to $115 billion. We've received no more than about $13 billion nationally appropriated to deal with this economic crisis. And I'm very concerned about sustaining the high quality, high touch, high contact elements we have in place should we reach the end of this calendar year and without a fiscal solution that provides the stability that the state is attempting to provide.
Thank you. I wasn't aware that the federal funding disparity was so great. That's good to know. Mr. Runcie, your challenges.
They're very similar. I would echo everything Superintendent Carvalho had mentioned. The disparities are significant. When we look at spending that we'll have just to maintain the PPE, personal protective equipment, as well as the health, safety, sanitation protocols, that will easily exceed $10 million per month just to be able to do that. That's something that hasn't been factored into any budget that we've had to deal with for our public schools. So those costs have to be addressed. We know how critical our schools are to the functioning of our economy. And I submit that if that's our priority, then getting the appropriate funding to public schools so that they can properly open has to be on the top of the list nationally as well as at state level. We want to open our schools. That is a priority for us. And we know how difficult it can be under these circumstances. What I tend to see, and I know is a huge challenge, is what these circumstances do for families. It places a heavy burden on our parents. It is likely to impact the social, emotional, and academic growth of children. So we want to open schools as quickly as we possibly can. From a technology standpoint, that hasn't been a big concern for us because about 4 years ago, we actually created a single sign-on platform in the district. We invested millions of dollars into that. And we also created a learning management system where the majority of our teachers were already doing a combination of blended learning. So our focus is continue to be on the professional development and trying to support our parents as they go through this challenging time with us. So what we've done over the past week, we actually launched a parent university series of webinars, which were highly successful. We had over 60,000 parents and guardians who participated, and it provided step-by-step strategies in terms of how they can support their children through the process. But I think making sure that when we talk about engagement, when we talk about learning in this environment, we have to recognize that our partners that our parents have become a greater partner in the educational process, and we've got to support them as well.
Thanks very much. So we asked people when they registered if they had questions. Well, overwhelmingly, most of their questions were for you guys. And overwhelmingly, the main question everybody wants to know is, when's school going to be back to having everybody on campus?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Is it an all or nothing proposition, or is there an intermediate step? And what markers are you looking for in the community health picture to guide your decision about go, no go to pivot from where we are right now? Mr. Carvalho.
So that is the biggest priority for us, and I appreciate the question. I know that's the biggest preoccupation and concern in our community. You know, all through this process, we've been guided by scientific voices. Under the leadership of this board, we assembled a remarkable group of individuals that have stayed on with us in terms of providing public health and medical advice regarding the reopening of schools. So we adopted a set of gating criteria that rely on local data, which include first and foremost the positivity rate over a 14-day period, reflecting a decline for the appropriate resumption of schools. Also, a lowering of mortality and morbidity, a lowering of hospitalization rates and viral strength in the community, as well as an adequate level of ICU hospital capacity. We are very, very happy over the fact that it appears over the past week and a half, we are in fact experiencing that decline in every single metric that we are measuring. Second part of your question, so that's the criteria we're using. The second part of your question, it is not an all or none proposition. We are very, very hopeful. We had informed the community that by September 30th, if conditions had improved, we would make an announcement regarding the resumption of physical schooling. We are very confident we're going to be able to move that deadline up sometime to the middle of September at the latest, on the basis of the projection of the trend data that we are utilizing. Lastly, we believe that even under stage one, we have an obligation to this community. And we will be launching a physical school experience in wave one for the most fragile students in our community. That includes students with disabilities and others. It will be sometime after the 31st of August, this coming Monday, but shortly thereafter. And then after that, as I said, we will continue to monitor the data, but we believe, based on the current trend, that by mid-September, we will have additional waves of students, if not full return, understanding that it's not 100% of the students. Understanding this community, 50% of the parents declared an interest in returning the students to the schoolhouse. 50% of the parents, about 50% of the parents declared an interest in maintaining their students in My School Online. That will allow us to have social distancing in schools and have a protective environment while addressing simultaneously the needs of parents to have their kids back in school. It is not lost to us the deleterious effects in terms of social, emotional, and mental health impacts that isolation can have on kids. So we are not rushing through the process, but we are encouraged by the data, and those are the goalposts that we have established for ourselves.
That data is so important. How confident are you that the data you're getting that's being shared with you by state and local health officials and the public officials is what you need, and how much confidence do you have in it?
I have reasonable confidence in the data that we're obtaining because all of it is locally generated. So we are in collaboration with county government. We use their daily dashboard, but we also consult with our panel of medical and public health experts, which include not only a former Attorney General of the United States of, a Surgeon General of the United States of America, but also the head of pediatric medicine for top epidemiologists from FIU and others. So we cross-reference the data, and at this point, I am fairly confident on the basis of their expert opinion that the daily data that we are having access to and our projections over the next few weeks is fairly accurate.
Thank you so much. Mr. Runcie, the veracity of the virus has been a bit different in Broward County than it has been in Miami-Dade, and so that equation is a little bit different for your district. Is your experience similar, or if it differs, how?
Yeah, well, I would actually say the equation is the same. The numbers that go into it might be slightly different based on where we are, but the methodology is the same in terms of gating criteria. We have 5 gating criteria that we use to determine when we'll be able to return face to face. First is the phase that the county's in. We're currently in phase 1. We've stated that we need to be in at least phase 2 prior to considering reopening our schools. Thereafter, there are 4 additional gating criteria. Number 1 is going to be disease progression. That's the indicators. They're trending in a positive direction in Broward as well. Over the weekend on Sunday, we saw a positivity rate of 4.3%. But yesterday, that rate went up from 4.3 to about 6%. So our focus has been to watch that rate, and we want it to consistently remain in a range of 3 to 5% over 14-day consecutive days. Secondly, we look at the community's ability to manage the spread. That continues to be a challenge as test results continue to lag, which impact the ability to do contact tracing. And what that means for the district is that when we have an issue, we've got to shut down our campuses for 14 days or longer. Third, our health system. We certainly want to commend the remarkable work of our frontline medical professionals in our community. But the data continues to reveal a significant impact on hospitals and healthcare facilities. And then finally, we look at our own ability, the district, to put the proper safeguards in to procure personal protective equipment. But what we're finding is that bulk availability of PPE at the scale required by Broward County schools is limited still. And again, the financial impact to the district to provide proper PPE over the midterm and the long term for a district of this size, it's going to equate to somewhere around $10 million per month to do that and also implement enhanced cleaning protocols. I'll just close and say this. If the current trends continue on the path of improvement, we could open sometime early this fall. Again, I can't guarantee or commit to a specific date, as the path of the virus will drive the decisions we have to make. A key checkpoint for us to revisit our status will be after the Labor Day holiday. So I'm optimistic. I'm encouraged. Look, our goal again is to open our schools as soon as possible. As I stated earlier, it's enormously difficult to run a school district under these circumstances, and it places a heavy burden on our parents and impacts the development of our children.
Thank you so much. We're coming to the end of our segment here, so I'd like to give both of you the opportunity to say a few words in closing, and in particular, talk to parents. What can they do to support their students and your teachers through this difficult time? Mr. Carvalho, if you could go first, please.
Certainly. So very briefly, number one, I want to thank the parents for what they helped us with during the last quarter last year and what we'll be asking of them once again. I know it's a sacrifice. Schooling from home, remote teaching and learning is not equivalent to homeschooling. It is not their responsibility to teach their children. We have teachers, best-in-class teachers and leaders who are responsible for that. But the appropriate monitoring is important. The appropriate supervision and guarantee that students are not just logging on, which, by the way, it's a significantly improved attendance system this year. It's not just once daily attendance. It will be taken hourly. There's also the level of engagement. And we've had a long-standing tradition of having a very active parent academy. We've gone virtual with dozens of webinars for parents to really gain important information. Call our hotline, 305-995-3000, for any issue regarding devices, connectivity, social and emotional support, mental health assistance, or just tips on how best to assist your child. Call us for information also regarding community sites for child supervision after the 31st. There will be opening collaboration with a number of third-party agencies. The other thing that I would say is a big concern, not only for me, but for our community, and Bob addressed it somewhat. Look, in a best case scenario, about 72% of individuals who are tested are getting their test results within 3 days. For us to effectively utilize our technology for contact tracing, which will reduce significantly the risk of contagion or the proportionality of spreading, we need to rely not only on rapid availability of testing, but equally swift delivery of test results. If the test result takes more than 48 hours, then the effectiveness of contact tracing, particularly in a school environment where children in one school may have siblings in other schools, contact with parents and teachers, if we cannot guarantee a return of results within 48 hours, then our ability to effectively contain situations that will emerge. I can guarantee you there will be cases in our schools, adult and children, but we can mitigate those as long as the effectiveness of contact tracing is elevated by swifter test result protocols in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Runcie.
Yes, let me just continue to acknowledge and thank our parents for their level of engagement, taking on additional burdens with all the other stressors that they have in their life, and continuing to be patient as we try to navigate through this difficult period. We want to make sure that we're supporting parents to the greatest extent that we can. I encourage them to go on to our browardschools.com/parent university to find our recorded webinars that we've done that are very instructive in terms of how to best support their kids. It's provided in multiple language: English, Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian, Creole, Arabic, Chinese, Vietnamese. We've done all of those pieces. The other thing I would point out is that we want to make sure that the digital divide doesn't become a learning and an opportunity divide here in Broward County. So we've issued computer devices to anyone that wants one. We've issued over 120,000 laptop computers to date. Any student who needs one, they can still contact their local school to pick that up. We've also worked to make arrangements with AT&T and Comcast to provide affordable internet connections for $10 or less. We encourage them to contact their folks. We've also put together a virtual call center to be able to support families and students regularly. And that's open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And they can call the district again for that. So just really doing all that we can to support our parents. And you have my word and commitment that I will be looking at the daily numbers that are coming out, and we will open our schools as soon as we can possibly do so, as soon as our public health officials and medical experts concur with us that it's safe for us to do though. There'll never be 100% safety. We're not looking for perfect to stand in the way of good, but we want to make sure that we can do this smart and responsibly.
Thank you, Mr. Carvalho and Mr. Runcie, for your time today. And thank you so much for all you're doing for the school children and the parents of South Florida. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'd like one last word.
Sure.
Our teachers, unsung heroes. I know the demand on them this time around has been extreme. New platform, new style of learning and teaching. And I really want to thank them for how resilient they are, how dedicated they are. And I'm asking the entire community to be patient with us as we continue to travel through these unprecedented times. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you both so much. Now we'll get closer to the action and talk to two teachers from Miami-Dade County about their experiences with online learning. Maria Babani teaches second grade gifted students at Key Biscayne K-8 Center, and Ray Paris teaches digital media at Hialeah Miami Lakes Senior High School. Both teachers have high school students of their own at home, so they have the perspective of being both teachers and working parents of school-age children in this challenging time. Ms. Babani, as a parent teaching from home, while you have your own child learning from home, how have you made that work?
A lot of conversations. Have to have a relationship with your children. Listen to her, have her express her feelings, shut all devices off, go outside, take walks in the fresh air. And I'm always checking up on a change in personality, anything that I see that is not in the norm. I've set up routines for her for school. Hopefully she'll have a learning area, and definitely open contact and open relationships with her teachers.
That sounds good. Mr. Paris, you've got twice the challenge. What has your experience been at home with your kids?
Well, we have a full house of teens, and basically one of the key things I've done with my kids was to create like a weekly goal and a daily goal. I think that was able to give my kids more direction through this process, and also giving them their own space, their own unique space where they can get organized, but also showing them how to be organized at the same time. One of the key things I realized for my kids was allowing them downtime, so that, they could celebrate success, because we have to, at least during these times, I mean, think about it, out of school, you want to be with your friends, you're home, you're doing the online learning, but definitely as parents, I recommend celebrating the success that your kids are going through this process. And also communication is key. You don't want to have that dialogue with your child. And I've been trying to figure out what's the best learning style for my kids. A lot of my kids are in New World, and they're active, their energy. So most of their assignments are like a lot more monologues and played out. But I think at the end of the day, it's having that communication with your child, and it's celebrating those minimal success.
Ms. Babani, what are you doing as a teacher now to keep your 7 and 8-year-olds engaged in the virtual classroom?
Well, I have to build a relationship with the parents before I even meet my children. And then once I meet my children, I need to be enthusiastic, just the same way I was in the classroom, maybe even more so. Set up routines, have time for them to take control of the whiteboards and express their thoughts and their answers, their responses. They also like to be engaged and to have a little time on the screen to share their thoughts and feelings. I also feel like we have to be flexible and forgiving. Okay, tomorrow is always a new day. So just because something may have gone wrong today, tomorrow we get to start all over again. I would have conversations, maybe text messaging, emails with the parents as well as the students, have informal Zoom meetings, and I am hoping to have some one-on-one time with each parent coming up soon.
You told me that you've gotten creative with using your house as a prop and things that you have in your environment. Tell us about that.
Oh yes, last spring all the students and myself, we all received our census envelopes in the mail. And I shared mine on screen and I taught the children about the census. It was a perfect learning experience. Also, I reached out to Miami-Dade County government and they were able to send coloring books for the children, reading books, things like that. But they were also able to share with me certain video links that I shared with the students. They started to post photos with their census envelope. And they had those conversations with mom and dad during dinner time. So it's a field trip. We're in a field trip in our home. It's like a scavenger hunt. You could ask them to look for certain things as a teacher that you're teaching about. Let's say we're talking about in math, cylinders or triangles. Well, go quick, 5 seconds, search for something that's a triangle, bring it back, share on screen. So you can use this great environment. We think of it as a positive new thing. Now we have everything around us in our home and we can share, if we want, with our classmates and our teacher.
Thanks. Mr. Paris, you've got a much different age group of students. What's your approach to teaching them in this virtual environment?
Well, definitely, I use a three-step approach. I want to make it fun, engaging, and also as an educator, I need to be compassionate for my students. I teach gaming and design. This is perfect for these conditions because I try to build the frame of mind for my students to have that mindset. Well, we teach a NFT curriculum where kids can actually solve problems and design apps and create games. And we also use esports. So what I did, I turned my room into an actual video game where we have the screens running in the back. We can test our apps out. We have demonstration models. I have the interactive bells here for my students. I make it just fun and it's just engaging. So at the end of the day, I think as teachers, the key is understanding your learners and the type of things and understanding the language that that our students actually interact with. So I think for me personally, the technical world, this online platform is beautiful. But my students even love it because I'm more engaging, a lot of action and animation that goes along with my classroom.
How might this period, Mr. Paris, alter approaches to teaching and learning even after this pandemic emergency passes?
Definitely this is a paradigm shift. They just had an article that Google is making a shift with these online classes where you can get, instead of a 4-year degree, you can get a skill and a certificate. And through our program at CTE, our students are able to build the skill set needed to make that shift into the digital world. For example, kids are now learning how to solve problems within their own community. through technology and be, addressing certain issues. But it's basically one key word is relevant comes to mind, is that education now needs to be relevant because we're going into the fourth industrial revolution where things are now shifting. You have AI, you have 3D printing. So the job for yesterday, today is going to look totally different in years to come. So we have to, as educators, prepare our kids to have that mindset. One of the key things that I teach through NEFTI is having that mindset to kind of grow and be adaptable and flexible when times change.
Thanks. Ms. Babani, what are some of the common denominators that you see among the students who are doing well with virtual learning?
Common denominators, they're prepared. They wake up early, they're ready to go. Their parents have probably already checked Wi-Fi connections. Their devices are charged before starting the day. And those children are not scared to speak up and express their feelings, share their ideas.
Thanks. So, Mr. Paris, I'll give you the flip side of that one. When students are struggling in the online environment, what are the common things that they struggle with, and how do you help them with that?
For me, I give them variety. You want to give them some different options. I do have online tutorials, things I've worked with. I also create a YouTube channel for my students that my website can translate from Spanish to Creole. I also have some kids might work better on different platforms. So as a technology teacher, I'm able to shift, but give my kids much more resources that they can actually use to kind of get the job done when it comes to their lessons.
Thanks. Ms. Babani, when we talked with the superintendents in the first segment, they mentioned that they're concerned, especially Mr. Carvalho, with the group of students, the English language learners, the special needs students, and the students who are academically challenged. What's this disruption doing to those students who already were challenged under the best of circumstances? And what might we think about as we move forward about giving them the tools that they need to succeed?
Well, I feel positive in the Superintendent Carvalho's idea that these children will receive the face-to-face that they need in the brick and mortar buildings. We need the community to reach out to these groups of students, and we need more parental involvement and engagement.
Thanks. When we asked people who registered to give us some questions, one question was about the difference between brick and mortar and online when it comes to something that's very much in your lane, Ms. Babani, and that is how effective is reading and math instruction in those early grades in the online environment compared to being in the classroom?
Well, I believe all the experts, teachers, educators, principals, superintendents, we all know that face-to-face is definitely more effective in the brick and mortar situation than in the virtual situation. We know that it's more effective, but we have to just focus on right now, right here, what the job that needs to get done. So we need for students to be engaged, more time engaged now on the computer with math and reading, especially for the little ones. Reading actually would be great if they did some independent reading at home with mom and dad, maybe for 30 minutes. This is not necessary to be done on the computer virtually. Pick up a book and read. Mathematically, we have mathematics in our daily life. When we go shopping, grocery shopping, when we need to make a grocery list or budget, we can involve our children in all those areas, but we do need parental engagement. We talk a lot about children being engaged in the virtual classroom. We need parents to become the child's PA, personal assistant, setting up that learning space, making sure that the internet safeguards are on, so maybe in a visible area in the home, but that learning space also we need to walk away from that learning space at the end of the day and not go back to the next day. So we really need all the stakeholders to work together, parents, children, teachers, the community. And I do believe we can do this.
Thanks. Mr. Paris, so as someone who was already teaching digital media, you kind of had an advantage going into this. What are some of your best practices that you would share with teachers that could help them use this environment better, more effectively?
Yeah. One of the key things they said that you get more traction is through video, from video engagement instead of a picture. So what I did, I kind of created tutorials. Like I made actual, because I teach AP 3D design. So I had to figure out how to model for my students. So what I did, I would pre-plan in advance. And one of the key things for educators, you have to have a plan going in. And what I've done was set up routines for my students where we have this from 10 minutes of lecture. Then we break out into I do, where I demonstrate, model for the students. Then I got my kids, then they actually model back for me. Then we go out in breakout rooms. And you got to keep it moving, and it can't be stale for more than 20 minutes. So one of the key things I've learned is to find different ways to get your kids engaged. For example, this year, my theme is, I come up with themes. This year is be cool, don't worry. See, so I put my shades on. I have different shades for different feelings. So whatever it takes to engage your kids, it's going to make your life easier at the end of the day, teachers. That's my best word advice.
You guys are actors, and you're definitely on stage. So just quickly as we close here with you all, what can parents do to best support you and their students? Ms. Babani?
I think just stay connected. Keep in touch, stay informed, reach out to us, don't assume, and just let's help the children together. Let's be a team, and be forgiving, just with children and with teachers. We're all in this together. It's new to us. Be flexible, and whatever happened today, tomorrow's a new day. And keep those conversations open, not just with your teachers, but with your children.
Thanks. Mr. Paris?
Parents, I would just look at it as an opportunity to learn new things, especially this whole new thing of the communication and keeping our kids in tune. But one of the key things I would try to stay more connected with your teachers through either emails, through the platform they're using, but also communicating with your child, understand their learners, what type of learning styles do they need to have in their room, in their space. And just, at the end of the day, just planning and having an agenda with your students, daily agenda and daily goals. I think that's one of the key things I would put out there for parents.
Thank you. Thank you to our teachers, Maria Babani and Ray Paris. Best of luck to you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And now for our final segment. There's a lot more to the school experience than just learning lessons. To talk to us about the social and emotional challenges the virtual learning environment poses to students, parents, and teachers, we have Danette Batra, who has a PhD and is a child psychologist at Nicholas Children's Hospital, and Dr. Nicole Mavridis, a professor and clinician in child psychiatry at the University of Miami School of Medicine. Thank you both. Thank you both for being here. Sorry, a little tongue twisted. You both told me that you're seeing elevated levels of anxiety and depression in school-aged children. Why is that, Dr. Mavridis, and what can parents do to help?
I think that because this has been going on for so long, and that people really expected things to be better over the summer, things were going to be better, in the fall. We are seeing higher levels of anxiety and depression. Kids are worried, parents are worried, teachers are worried. And I think also the distance, right? The fact that kids are so removed from their friends, and the other people around them. I think that it's been really tough for the families and for especially for kids who had pre-existing conditions. The best way for kids and parents to deal with all of this is to keep an open line of communication, and for parents to know what some of the warning signs are, what to look for, if their kids are withdrawing, if they're kind of refusing to, come to dinner, or if they're refusing to do schoolwork, or if they're refusing to do things. Those are big warning signs, and they're things to look for.
Yeah, I'm really interested in those warning signs. Let's talk more about that for just a minute.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
What are some of the early tells for a parent to
the
watch
biggest
for?
things, for kids in terms of like, what do we look for in terms of depression? It's, them being not enjoying things, not even wanting to do some of the things that they used to love to do. Like, even if your kid loves video games and all of a sudden it's just like, Fortnite, I don't even want to play anymore. That's a big change in their behaviors. Sleeping too much, like just not able to get the kids up in the morning, staying up super late, not doing anything, not being able to, just not caring about going to school, not caring to meet their teachers. All these things are pretty big warning signs to parents.
Okay, thanks. So, Dr. Batra, we were talking there about parents. Now, what about teachers? Okay, so teachers will be spending more time in front of these students than parents on some days. So, what can teachers do to help students who are struggling emotionally with this time?
Yeah, absolutely. So teachers definitely are with our kids. They're seeing them a lot of hours throughout the day. And as Dr. Mavrides said, there are definitely warning signs that even teachers can pick up on. So if you see a child or a student that is just not engaging in the virtual platform, making sure that there is an opportunity that you reach out to that family and check in on them, or trying different strategies to get them to engage. If you also notice that a child's affect, so the way they present in their face is not something that you think is gonna make them learn in the school day, that's something else that you can also mention to their parents or to the child directly if they're young, if they're a little bit older. So I think having an open line of communication between teachers and families and the students can be a really helpful way to pick up on those warning signs, since our teachers are on the front lines and seeing our kids so many hours throughout the day.
Thanks. There's a lot of debate about whether the negative emotional and social effects of children not physically being in school are not greater than the risks of getting the virus. Where do you stand on that, and why? Dr. Batra first, please.
Sure. So I think that this is a really, really difficult situation. And depending on the age of the child, their social and emotional development is so important. And being around their peers, around their teachers, and learning in an environment that supports that ability to socialize with others is really key. For our younger kiddos, we want them doing things like learning social skills and being able to make friends and interact with other people that are not family members. And for our older teens or our adolescents, we know that they need to have that dynamic with their peers and with their teachers to kind of, learn about their own identities. So I do think that this is a really difficult situation. It's hard to balance the risk and the benefits of staying home to protect ourselves from the COVID when there's all these other things going on. I think a big piece is our children's mental health and how it's been impacted by this transition to virtual school. School is for many children, is a safe haven. So I think that's another thing to consider as well. Not only their learning abilities, which we know is drastically improved in brick and mortar, but their social and emotional development and how important that is to being able to even deal with the COVID pandemic that we're dealing with right now.
Thank you. Dr. Mavrides, where are you on this? In school, out of school, weigh that equation.
So I agree with what a lot of Dr. Batra was saying in terms of the social emotional aspect and how, we really want kids, especially the younger ones, to learn how to get along with each other and share and learn what's right and wrong and how to interact. And then, as for the middle school and the high school kids, we want them to figure out their own identities, but we have to also think about, the teachers and the staff and all the people that would be, being put at risk for interaction if we were back in school before the virus is properly contained, or without the proper, guidelines in place. And I think, yes, it's going to be hard for kids to wear masks and things like that, but I think that in order to get them back to being in a brick and mortar school where we know that the learning is, going to be better for them and that the social and emotional aspects are going to be improved, we have to also make sure we're protecting all of the people who are doing the teaching and are doing the cleaning and are doing the cooking and are doing the bus driving. And I think, we have to weigh both of those things when we're thinking about getting them back into the school.
So let's take a scenario for a minute. I'm sure there are students who were less comfortable in physical school and are doing better now in a virtual environment. They're by themselves, they can focus. When the call to go back to school comes and you're the parent of one of those students, what do? How do you weigh that? Dr. Batra.
Yeah, I think that that's a challenging prospect, but I myself in my own clinical expertise and with my patients have seen some students excel on the virtual platforms. Academically, they're prospering, they have limited distractions in their home, and they are able to focus and attend better. I think that, again, it goes with weighing the balances of when your child says, you know what, I actually really like this virtual online program, kind of speaking to your child, having an open conversation and letting them know about what are the opportunities and the benefits of attending a traditional school, again, for the social and emotional aspects. For lots of kids, they might see that that's a deterrent. Going to school might not be the best in their social interests, but parents can have that conversation with their children to let them know that this is a space for you to be able to practice that. A lot of the children that I have noticed have flourished in the virtual online platform are kids who have more social anxiety. And so being by themselves, independent at home, is actually something that's more comforting for them. And that's actually something that we don't recommend as clinicians. We actually recommend that we expose our children to the situations and make them uncomfortable so that they are better able to deal with the anxieties in any situation that they have. So as parents, I'd recommend having that open conversation with them. If you're a parent that would support having your child back in, brick and mortar school when everything is safe to do so, then, having that conversation with your child about why that would be so important.
Dr. Mavridis, let's just a minute. Pushing a child into an uncomfortable space can be one of the most difficult things that a parent does, especially making it stick. What do you recommend?
Absolutely. And I think, what we're pushing a child is it's a hard words to say, right? Because we want our kids to do the best that they can do. We want our kids to do the things that are going to make them succeed. And in some ways, the kids are going to say, oh, but I'm doing so well at home, I don't want to do this. But for parents, I think we need to make sure that they know that this is, really just a blip in their uncomfortability. That once, it's anticipation anxiety, and that once you actually go back and you start up again, it's not going to be as big of a deal as I think we're making it out to be. And, there's no right or wrong answer, and it's not an across the board thing for every single kid. There might be some kids that are going to be better off being in a virtual environment. And if they can manage that, and they're also having their social and emotional experiences from other ways, like whether they're going to gymnastics or art or, karate or other sporting teams, and they're succeeding in school, let them stay, maybe staying in virtual school would be the best idea for them. Not everybody is going to be needing to get back into the brick and mortar school. So I think each individual family needs to sit down and figure out what's going to be best for them and as a whole. And, if the parents really feel like their kids are going to do better in a school system and be back in school, they need to start having those conversations now and start talking to their kids now in preparation for a month, 2 months, 3 months from now, so that the kids are ready and they're not springing it on them at the last minute.
So let's talk quickly now about the three very different age groups we have in public school. The early years students, K through 3, let's say. Dr. Batra, the social emotional aspects there are different from the other ages. What would you be concerned about for that age group?
For the younger age group, I'd be concerned more also similar to the warning signs that Dr. Maritas already talked about, even for the older age group, is just withdrawal, not seem energetic to play with toys at home that they once used to love to play with. I'd also keep an eye out on developmental milestones. So making sure you're checking in with your pediatrician, for their regular checkups, making sure that they are developing in all areas of growth, physically and emotionally. So for the younger subset, one of the key goals is to make sure that they are learning how to get along with others. They're being able to follow directions and able to attend to content as necessary, and also early learning. So their ability to retain information and to put it into practice is key things that we should be monitoring as parents, as pediatricians, as teachers, as clinicians, to make sure that they're thriving even in the virtual space.
Thanks. Well, Dr. Maritas, what about parents of those crazy middle schoolers? What about them? And, oh, I'm not with my friends, I just won't survive. What do you tell those parents?
This is definitely the hardest age group, I think, because they're kind of caught in the middle, right? They're just wanting to be with their friends. They're starting a brand new thing. They're in these school systems, and I think the biggest thing for them is also to continue to allow them to have some sort of social interactions. There's lots of ways to do that, whether it's through, Teams or Zoom or FaceTime or, on those video game platforms. Letting them have that interaction with their friends is really important. And it may be that the parents need to get a little bit more involved to allow them that interaction. I have a few kids where, they're setting up their screens for school, and they're also having their, iPhone open on the side so that they can quickly do a FaceTime with their best friend, when there's a break, or they're doing, jumping jacks in the middle because they're setting up their things to get ready for their sporting events. And, letting those things happen, they're not really the way you would normally encourage kids to be in school, but whatever's going to make them find it to be successful and find it to be enjoyable. Because, going to school is not always the most enjoyable aspect for kids. They're there for the social aspect. They're not necessarily all there for the learning. So trying to figure out how to balance those things and allow the parents to engage their kids in that is going to be really key.
Dr. Becha, what about the older students now, the ones that are on the verge of adulthood? Mm-hmm. They've got the anxiety about college, mm-hmm. especially in the current environment. What would you be advising them and their parents?
I would be advising those older kiddos and parents to allow some of those older kids to make decisions as much as possible, allowing them choices whenever possible. So we're getting them ready for adulthood. They're thinking about applying for college, and they're going to be making these big decisions. Even in this virtual world, there might be some options that they have. So whether they want to take a break from a certain class at a certain time, and also making sure that they're staying connected as well to their friends and their social all the social experiences that you would expect for adolescents to go through. So whether it's having a virtual meet and greet, group FaceTime, anything like that would be also something that I'd recommend. So for parents, I'd recommend allowing your child to make some choices at this stage, whether they want to do class in a certain time, do homework at a certain time, and then take a break and then do something else. So giving them some flexibility in their structure of the schedule that they're doing, as well as making sure that they're staying connected to their peers as much as possible.
Thanks. We have time for one quick final thought from each of you. Dr. Maritas, anything that you would like to share and close?
I think that just for the parents, we know that this is hard. We know that this isn't optimal. And the teachers are working really hard to get the platform set up and the kids to really learn. But for parents, you really have to have a communication with not only your kid, but with your kids' teachers, and really be working on all of the things that, would normally be done in school, doing those things in the off hours, like teaching your kids, how to set the table and how to interact and how to respond to questions. It's going to be a lot of work, but I think, the more that we can do together, the better that our kids are going to be able to come out from this.
Thank you. Dr. Becha, final thought?
Yeah, so I'd recommend for these families, stay engaged as much as you possibly can on this virtual platform. That's something that we know is key for really good mental health. Keeping engaged, staying active as much as possible, keeping your minds active is so important. So making sure also parents that you're checking in with your kids. How are you feeling? Making sure that you are letting them know that you're sensing that they look a little different or they might be feeling a little different, having that open conversation and making sure you're reaching out to a professional if you see any of those warning signs that Dr. Mavrides or I talked about and shared earlier today.
Thank you both so much for sharing your time and expertise with our audience. We really appreciate it. And that concludes our program. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you'll keep reading the work of the Miami Herald and El Nuevo Herald as we strive to keep the community informed about the challenges of education in the pandemic. Goodbye, and stay safe.